My name is Katerina, and I'm 34 years old. I never imagined I'd be sharing this story with strangers, but sometimes life has other plans. 8 years of marriage to Daniel and I thought we had it all. The perfect house, the perfect life, the perfect love, until that business trip to Chicago got cancelled, and instead of telling my husband, I decided to surprise him by coming home early. That surprise turned into the most devastating moment of my life when I found myself hiding in our bedroom closet with a voice recorder, listening to my husband bring another woman into our home. If you're watching this video, like and subscribe, and let me know where you're watching from. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this story ends. I met Daniel at a charity gala I organised for the Children's Hospital. As an event planner, I was used to seeing beautiful people in beautiful clothes, but something about Daniel made me stop in my tracks. Maybe it was his confident smile, or the way he looked at me like I was the only person in a room of 300 guests. He was charming, intelligent, and seemed genuinely interested in my work, rather than just making small talk. "You've created something magical here," he told me that night, gesturing around at the transformation I'd made to the ordinary hotel ballroom. "You must be incredibly talented." That compliment led to drinks after the event, which led to dinner the following weekend. And before I knew it, we were seeing each other every day. The connection between us felt magical, like something out of a movie. We could talk for hours about anything and everything, finishing each other's sentences and laughing at the same jokes. 6 months into our relationship, Daniel proposed during a weekend trip to the mountains. The sunrise proposal on a private balcony overlooking the valley was everything I could have dreamed of. I said yes without hesitation, convinced I had found my soulmate, my partner, my forever. Our wedding was intimate but beautiful. We exchanged vows in a garden ceremony surrounded by 50 of our closest friends and family. I can still remember the look in his eyes as he promised to love and cherish me forever. I believed every word. The first 3 years of our marriage were blissful. We rented a small apartment downtown, saving money for our dream home while building our careers. Daniel worked as a financial analyst for a prestigious firm, often talking about his goals of making partner one day. I supported him through late nights and stressful projects, believing we were building our future together. We both shared the same dream of owning a beautiful home, a place where we could eventually raise a family. We would spend weekends driving through neighborhoods we loved, pointing out features we wanted in our future house: a wraparound porch, bay windows, a large kitchen for entertaining. After 4 years of saving, we finally had enough for a down payment. The house hunting process was exciting but exhausting. We visited dozens of properties before finding the one, a beautiful colonial with a big backyard in a quiet neighborhood just outside the city. The moment we walked in, we looked at each other and knew this was home. Buying our house was one of the proudest moments of our life together. I still remember standing in the empty living room after closing Daniel spinning me around in celebration before we toasted with champagne on the floor, surrounded by moving boxes. Everything felt perfect. Daniel's career continued to flourish. He received promotion after promotion, each one bringing more responsibility and a higher salary. I was so proud of him, watching him excel at work while maintaining his kind, loving nature at home. Or so I thought. Looking back, there were warning signs I chose to ignore. The gradually increasing late nights at the office, the decreased intimacy between us, the vague answers about his day. But when you love someone, you make excuses. He's just stressed. The project is demanding. Things will go back to normal soon. For our 5th anniversary, I planned a special dinner at the restaurant where we had our first date. I spent weeks making arrangements, ensuring everything would be perfect. But Daniel seemed distant throughout the meal, checking his phone repeatedly and offering only surface-level conversation. When I asked if something was wrong, he claimed he was just preoccupied with work. I chose to believe him. My own career was thriving too. I had built a reputation as one of the top event planners in the city, organising everything from corporate functions to celebrity weddings. My success meant occasional business trips, sometimes lasting several days. Daniel always encouraged my career growth, telling me how proud he was of my accomplishments. Now I wonder if he was just happy to have the house to himself during those trips. The night of our housewarming party, I overheard a colleague complimenting Daniel on his beautiful home. "You're a lucky man," the colleague said. Daniel smiled and replied, "I know. At the time, I thought he meant he was lucky to have me. Now, I'm not so sure what kind of luck he was referring to." The first time I noticed something was wrong was about 6 years into our marriage. Daniel came home late one night, the collar of his white dress shirt stained with what looked unmistakably like lipstick. My stomach dropped when I saw it, but when I pointed it out, he had a ready explanation. "Oh, that must be from Diane in accounting," he said casually. "She had too much to drink at the office party and was getting a bit emotional about her divorce. She hugged everyone before leaving." He looked me right in the eyes when he said it so convincingly that I felt silly for even questioning him. "I should have changed before coming home," he added with an apologetic smile. "Sorry if it made you worry." I believed him. I wanted to believe him. But something shifted that night, a tiny crack forming in the foundation of our trust. After that, I started noticing other changes. Daniel began password protecting his phone, something he had never done before. When I asked about it casually over breakfast one morning, he claimed it was a new company policy for data security. Again, it seemed reasonable enough. Then came the new habit of showering immediately after coming home regardless of the time. Even if he'd return at midnight, he'd head straight for the bathroom. When I mentioned it, he said he'd started using the company gym after work and didn't want to bring the sweat into our bed. It made sense, but I couldn't remember him ever mentioning joining a gym. One morning while doing laundry, I noticed an unfamiliar perfume scent on his clothes. It was subtle, but distinct, definitely not mine and too feminine to be a cologne. When I brought it up, Daniel attributed it to the new administrative assistant, who apparently wore too much perfume and had been delivering files to his office regularly. He even complained about it, saying it gave him a headache. His annoyance seemed so genuine that I felt bad for suspecting him. As the weeks passed, the internal struggle between trust and suspicion became exhausting. I would swing between feeling secure in our relationship and consumed by doubt sometimes in the same day. I started second-guessing myself. Was I being paranoid? Insecure? Was my busy schedule making me project fears onto my marriage? The dinner party that really set my alarm bells ringing happened about 7 months ago. We hosted several of Daniel's colleagues, including a woman named Jessica, who had recently joined his team. She was beautiful in that effortless way, with long auburn hair and confident body language. What caught my attention wasn't her appearance, but the way Daniel behaved around her. He seemed hyper-aware of her presence, always ensuring her glass was full, laughing a bit too enthusiastically at her jokes. There was an energy between them that made my skin prickle. After the guests left, I casually mentioned that Jessica seemed nice. Daniel's response was oddly defensive. "She's just a colleague, Kat, very talented at her job, but that's it." I hadn't suggested otherwise, which made his reaction all the more suspicious. The next day, I called my best friend Taylor for coffee. We've been friends since college and she's always been my sounding board. When I confided my concerns, she listened carefully before responding. "It could be nothing," she said, stirring her latte. "But in my experience, when your gut is screaming at you this loudly, there's usually a reason. Have you tried talking to him directly about how you feel?" I had in subtle ways, but Daniel had become increasingly emotionally distant, expertly deflecting any serious conversation with vague reassurances or by changing the subject. Our communication, once so open and fluid, had become a carefully choreographed dance around the truth. His excuses to be away from home multiplied. Suddenly, there were client dinners, I wasn't invited to weekend workshops that couldn't be rescheduled, and late meetings that apparently couldn't be held during business hours. Each excuse was plausible on its own, but together they formed a pattern I couldn't ignore. In a last-ditch effort to reconnect, I planned a romantic weekend getaway to the beach house where we'd spent our honeymoon. I made all the arrangements 2 months in advance, making sure Daniel had blocked the dates in his calendar. 2 days before we were supposed to leave, he cancelled, claiming an emergency client situation that required his immediate attention. When I offered to reschedule for the following weekend, he was non-committal, saying we'd have to see how things played out. The final straw came when Daniel left his phone on the kitchen counter while taking a shower. We had been taking photos earlier at a neighborhood barbecue, and I wanted to look at some of the pictures we'd taken. As I picked up his phone, a text message notification appeared on the screen. "Can't wait for tomorrow night. Been thinking about you all day." The message was from a contact named J.S. Work. Jessica Smith. My heart sank as pieces started falling into place. I put the phone down before Daniel returned, pretending I hadn't seen anything, but inside something had broken. The doubt I'd been fighting for months crystallized into a terrible certainty. My husband was having an affair. After seeing that text message, I knew I needed more than just suspicions and circumstantial evidence. If I confronted Daniel with nothing concrete, he would deny everything, make me feel crazy for doubting him, and become more careful about hiding his tracks. I needed irrefutable proof, both for him and honestly for myself. I started paying close attention to patterns in his behavior. Tuesday and Thursday evenings became his regular late nights at the office, always returning home after 9, sometimes later. On these nights, he would text throughout the day about how swamped he was, setting the stage for his delayed return. One evening, while organizing our home office, I came across our credit card statements that Daniel usually reviewed. Normally, I let him handle our finances since he was the financial analyst, but something compelled me to look closer. There were multiple charges at restaurants and hotels I had never been to, always on those Tuesday and Thursday evenings. One hotel. The Madison appeared repeatedly, always with a charge that suggested more than just drinks at the bar. When I casually mentioned one of the restaurants, asking if it might be good for a client meeting, I was planning Daniel became flustered before regaining his composure. "It's nothing special," he said dismissively. "Just convenient to the office for team meetings." Another discovery came when I was cleaning out his car before getting it detailed as a surprise. Tucked in the glove compartment was a jewelry store receipt for a silver bracelet with a heart charm dated just 2 weeks before my birthday. I never received such a gift. That night at dinner, I mentioned that I had his car detailed. "You didn't need to do that," he said, his expression momentarily alarmed before he masked it with a smile. "But thanks, I appreciate it." "I found some interesting receipts while cleaning it out," I said, watching him carefully. He froze mid-bite. "Oh, like what?" "Just some parking stubs and drive-through receipts." I lied, wanting to see if he would volunteer information about the jewelry. He visibly relaxed and continued eating, saying nothing. Another confirmation of my growing suspicions. The opportunity to gather definitive evidence presented itself unexpectedly. I was scheduled for an important business trip to Chicago, a 3-day conference where I would be presenting to potential clients. Daniel knew about this trip for months, as it was a significant opportunity for my career. The day before my departure, I received an email that the conference had been postponed due to a venue issue. My presentation was rescheduled for the following month. Sitting at my desk, staring at that email, a thought occurred to me. What if I didn't tell Daniel about the cancellation? What if I pretended to go on the trip as planned? Would he use my absence as an opportunity? The thought made me sick, but I needed to know the truth. That evening, I packed my suitcase as planned while Daniel watched television in the living room. "Are you all set for tomorrow?" he asked, barely looking up from his phone. "All packed," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "My flight's at 11, so I'll need to leave for the airport around 8. He nodded, still distracted. "I'll miss you," he said, the words sounding hollow. "But I'll be busy with that Henderson account anyway, probably working late every night you're gone." The next morning, I kissed Daniel goodbye, wheeled my suitcase to my car, and drove away. Instead of heading to the airport, I went to Taylor's apartment, where I had arranged to stay during my trip. I left my car in her garage, out of sight. That afternoon, while checking my email at Taylor's, I received a text from Daniel that clearly wasn't meant for me. House will be empty tonight through Thursday. Cat's out of town for a conference. He had caught himself quickly following up with a message clearly meant for me. Hope you landed safely. Miss you already. I stared at the phone, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. There it was. Proof he was planning something while I was supposedly away. I called Taylor immediately, barely able to speak through my tears. I knew it, I sobbed when she answered. He's bringing someone to our house, to our home. Taylor came home from work early, holding me while I cried. When I finally calmed down, she looked at me seriously. What are you going to do now? Confront him. I shook my head. Not yet. I need to catch them in the act. No explanations, no excuses, no gaslighting. I need to see it with my own eyes. Are you sure that's what you want? Taylor asked gently. Seeing them together might be more painful than you anticipate. I need to know everything, I insisted. For the divorce. The word divorce felt strange in my mouth, but oddly saying it aloud brought a sense of clarity. This marriage was over, regardless of what happened next. Taylor helped me plan my next steps. I would return to my house the next evening before Daniel got home from work. I would park several blocks away and enter using the spare key hidden in the garden. Then I would set up a voice recorder in our bedroom and hide in the walk-in closet, which was large enough for me to wait comfortably and had louvered doors that would allow me to see into the room. That evening, I went to an electronics store and purchased a high-quality voice recorder with excellent battery life. As I paid, the salesperson asked cheerfully if I was recording a podcast. Something like that, I replied, the irony bitter in my mouth. Little did he know I was preparing to record the destruction of my marriage. Wednesday evening arrived with agonizing slowness. I left Taylor's apartment around 5, knowing Daniel usually arrived home around 7 on his late nights. I parked my car several blocks away as planned and walked to our house, constantly checking over my shoulder, terrified of being seen by a neighbor who might mention it to Daniel. Using the hidden spare key, I slipped into our home, the familiar surroundings suddenly feeling alien. This space that had been my sanctuary now felt contaminated by betrayal. I moved through the rooms, silently checking that everything appeared normal. In the kitchen, I noticed Daniel had already cleared away the breakfast dishes, something he rarely did. He was preparing the house for a guest. Our bedroom looked immaculate with fresh sheets on the bed. My stomach turned at the realization he had changed our bedding specifically for this encounter. On my nightstand, Daniel had turned my photograph face down as if he couldn't bear my eyes watching what he planned to do. I set up the voice recorder, hiding it between books on the shelf where it would capture sound clearly without being visible. Then I entered our walk-in closet, positioning myself behind my hanging clothes, where I could see through the louvered doors without being spotted. I had brought a small bottle of water and a protein bar, unsure how long I would be waiting. Sitting there in the dim closet, surrounded by the clothes we had bought together over our years of marriage, I experienced a strange sense of calm determination mixed with devastating heartbreak. The minutes ticked by with excruciating slowness as I waited every distant sound, making my heart race. At 7:13 p.m., I heard the front door open. Daniel's familiar footsteps moved through the house, followed by the sound of the shower running. 30 minutes later, I heard him moving around the bedroom, the scent of his cologne wafting into the closet. He was preparing himself, making a special effort for her. At 7:56 p.m., the doorbell rang. From my hiding spot, I couldn't see Daniel leave the room, but I heard his footsteps quicken with excitement as he went to answer. There was a pause, then voices in the entryway, a woman's laugh, warm and intimate. Their footsteps moved to the kitchen, where I heard glasses clinking. They were having wine in the special crystal glasses we received as wedding gifts. After what seemed like an eternity, the bedroom door opened. Daniel entered first, leading Jessica by the hand. She was even more beautiful up close, wearing a simple black dress that highlighted her slender figure. My heart pounded so loudly, I was certain they would hear it. "Are you sure she won't be back early?" Jessica asked, glancing around the room nervously. "I don't want a repeat of that close call at the office." Daniel laughed, pulling her closer. "Absolutely sure. She's presenting at a conference in Chicago. Won't be back until Friday afternoon." He kissed her neck. "We have all night." "This feels strange," Jessica said, though she made no move to pull away. "Being in your house, in your bedroom." "Our bedroom now," Daniel corrected her, and I felt sick. "I told you Kat and I are essentially over. We're just going through the motions at this point. As soon as I figure out how to protect my assets, I'm filing for divorce." Jessica sat on the edge of the bed, my side of the bed. "You've been saying that for months, Daniel. What's taking so long?" "It's complicated," he sighed dramatically. "She's completely wrapped up in her career, hardly notices me anymore. But we've built a life together, own property together. I need to be smart about how I end things." I bit my lip hard to keep from making a sound. His portrayal of our marriage was so twisted, so fundamentally dishonest, that I barely recognized the relationship he was describing. "Poor Daniel," Jessica cooed, running her hand along his arm. "Always taking care of everyone else." "That's what I love about you." Love. The word stabbed me like a knife. This wasn't just a physical affair. There were emotions involved, deep ones. "She doesn't appreciate what she has," Jessica continued. "If you were mine, I'd never put my career before you." Daniel nodded solemnly. 6 months together, and you understand me better than she has in 8 years of marriage. 6 months. Their affair had been going on for half a year while I was working, sleeping beside him, loving him, building our future. The betrayal was so complete it took my breath away. As they continued talking, the conversation became more intimate. Daniel shared details about our marriage, our finances, our personal struggles. He told Jessica about my insecurities, my family issues, things I had shared with him in moments of vulnerability, now weaponized for sympathy from his mistress. Then the physical intimacy began, and I had to close my eyes, unable to watch them together in our bed. But I couldn't block out the sounds, each one driving the reality of his betrayal deeper. The pain was physical, like being repeatedly stabbed in the chest. I pressed my hand over my mouth to stifle my sobs, tears streaming down my face. At one point, Daniel left the bed and went to his dresser drawer. He returned with a small jewelry box. "I got this for you," he said to Jessica. "A little something to show you how much you mean to me." Jessica opened the box and gasped. "It's beautiful," she whispered, lifting out a silver necklace with a pendant. My heart stopped as I recognized it, identical to the one Daniel had given me for our last anniversary, which he had claimed was one of a kind. He had even used the same words when giving it to me, the same tender expression. Nothing in our relationship had been unique or special. He had been playing a role all along. As Jessica turned for Daniel to fasten the necklace around her neck, she said something that broke what remained of my heart. "You know what I love most about being with you, how real it is. No pretending, no games, just us being completely honest with each other." Daniel's response was the final betrayal. "That's what I've been missing my entire life. Someone who truly knows me and loves me anyway." In that moment, hiding in the closet of my own bedroom, listening to my husband declare his love for another woman, I knew I couldn't stay silent any longer. The pain transformed into rage, a white-hot fury that gave me strength I didn't know I possessed. I reached for the closet door, ready to confront the two people who had destroyed my world. I pushed open the closet door with such force that it slammed against the wall. The sound echoed through the room like a gunshot, causing both Daniel and Jessica to jump apart in shock. Jessica scrambled to cover herself with the sheet, her eyes wide with panic. Daniel froze his face, draining of all colour as he stared at me in disbelief. "Katerina," he finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper. "What are you? You're supposed to be in Chicago." I stood in the doorway of the closet voice recorder, now in my hand, my entire body shaking with rage and adrenaline. Surprise, I said, my voice unnaturally calm, despite the storm raging inside me. The conference was cancelled, but don't let me interrupt your honest, real relationship. Jessica looked between Daniel and me, clutching the sheet to her chest, the necklace he had just given her glinting in the bedroom light. Daniel, her voice trembled, you said she wouldn't be home. You promised. He promises a lot of things, I replied before Daniel could speak. To love and cherish, to be faithful, to honour our vows. Apparently, those promises have an expiration date of about 6 months ago. Daniel seemed to recover from his initial shock, his expression shifting from fear to anger. What the hell, Kat? You were hiding in the closet spying on me. That's insane. Insane, I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. Insane is bringing your mistress into our marriage bed. Insane is telling her our marriage is over when you've never once had the courage to say that to my face. I held up the voice recorder. But don't worry, I've got everything recorded. Every word about how you're just waiting to protect your assets before divorcing me. Every lie you told her about our marriage. Every promise you made her while wearing your wedding ring. Jessica was hurriedly gathering her clothes from the floor, her face flushed with humiliation. I should go, she mumbled. No, please stay, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. You're clearly an important part of this marriage now. And since we're all being so honest and real, maybe you'd like to tell me how long this has actually been going on, because Daniel here seems to think it's been 6 months. But I'm guessing it started around the time he joined the Thompson Project, about 9 months ago. Jessica stopped looking at Daniel with confusion. The Thompson Project, but that's when you said you and Katerina started having serious problems. You said that's why you were considering separation. I nodded. Interesting. 9 months ago, we were planning a second honeymoon. Funny how his timeline keeps shifting. Daniel stood up, pulling on his pants. Jessica, don't listen to her. She's just upset and trying to turn you against me. Oh, I'm definitely upset, I agreed. Finding your husband screwing another woman in your own bed tends to have that effect. But I'm not lying. Unlike you, I don't need to lie. Jessica had finished dressing, her earlier confidence completely evaporated. Daniel, you told me your marriage was basically over before we even started. You said your wife was cold, career-obsessed, never home. He was setting the stage, Jessica, I explained, surprising myself with how steady my voice remained, creating a narrative to justify his actions. Classic cheater behaviour. You told me you were sleeping in separate bedrooms. Jessica continued, now addressing Daniel directly. That you hadn't been intimate in over a year. I laughed again, the sound bitter. Last week, Daniel. We were intimate last week. Let me guess he told you that trip to the mountains 3 months ago was a business conference. That was our anniversary weekend. Jessica looked stricken. She grabbed her purse from the dresser. I can't do this. I won't be part of this. As she moved toward the door, she paused beside me. I truly didn't know, she said quietly. He said you two had an understanding. The only understanding I have now is that my husband is a pathological liar, I replied, stepping aside to let her pass. But you might want to check that necklace he gave you. It's the same one he gave me for our anniversary. Apparently, it wasn't as one-of-a-kind as he claimed. Jessica's hand flew to the pendant at her throat. Without another word, she unclasped it, dropped it on the floor, and left. Moments later, I heard the front door slam. Now it was just Daniel and me. The air between us felt charged with 8 years of history, now irreparably damaged. Happy now! Daniel spat, his handsome face contorted with anger. You've ruined everything. I ruined everything, I repeated incredulously. That's rich coming from the man I just caught having sex with another woman in our bed. If you had been a proper wife, I wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere, he shot back. Always working, always travelling. What did you expect? I expected basic human decency and respect, I said. I expected the man who vowed to love me, to at least have the courage to tell me he wanted out before screwing his co-worker. Daniel's eyes fixed on the recorder still in my hand. "Give me that," he demanded, stepping toward me. I backed away. "Not a chance. This is my insurance policy against whatever lies you're planning to tell our friends, families, and divorce lawyers." His expression changed, a calculating look replacing the anger. "Kat, be reasonable. That recording was made without consent. It's illegal in this state. You can't use it." "Maybe not in court," I conceded, "but I'm sure your boss would be interested to hear how you've been conducting yourself with a subordinate. Sexual relationships between managers and direct reports are against company policy, aren't they?" Daniel's face paled. "You wouldn't." "Try me," I challenged. "You've taken everything else from me. My marriage, my trust, my security. I have nothing left to lose." Something dangerous flashed in Daniel's eyes. He lunged forward suddenly, grabbing for the recorder. I jerked away, but his fingers caught my wrist, twisting hard. Pain shot up my arm as we struggled, Daniel's grip tightening to the point of bruising. "Let go!" I shouted, trying to break free. "You're hurting me!" "Give me the recorder!" He growled, his face inches from mine, unrecognizable in its fury. In that moment, I realized I was looking at a stranger. The Daniel I loved or thought I loved had never existed. This man, violent and cruel, was who he truly was. With my free hand, I slapped him hard across the face. The shock of the impact caused him to loosen his grip just enough for me to wrench away. I ran for the bathroom, slamming and locking the door behind me just as Daniel crashed against it. "Open this door, Katerina!" he shouted, pounding with his fist. "Open it now! Get away from me!" I screamed back, frantically searching for my phone. Finding it in my pocket, I called Taylor with shaking hands. "Taylor," I sobbed when she answered. "I need help. Daniel's gone crazy. He tried to attack me." "Where are you?" she asked immediately, her voice sharp with concern. "Locked in our bathroom." "He's trying to get in." As if to punctuate my words, Daniel slammed against the door again, the wood frame creaking ominously. "I'm calling the police," Taylor said. "Luke and I are on our way. Stay on the phone with me." Luke was Taylor's brother, a former college football player built like a linebacker. The thought of him coming gave me courage. "Daniel," I called through the door, trying to sound calmer than I felt. "I've called the police. They're on their way. If you break this door down, you'll be facing assault charges on top of everything else." The pounding stopped. After a moment of silence, Daniel spoke, his voice eerily controlled. "This isn't over, Kat. You think you've won, but you have no idea what's coming. This house, our savings, everything we've built. You'll get nothing. I'll make sure of it." "Is that a threat?" I asked, holding my phone closer to the door so Taylor could hear. "It's a promise," he replied. "By the time I'm done with you, you'll wish you'd never come back from Chicago." I heard his footsteps retreating, then the slam of the front door. Still, I remained locked in the bathroom until Taylor called out my name. 20 minutes later, Luke's deep voice confirming they had checked the house and Daniel was gone. When I finally emerged, legs shaking so badly I could barely walk, Taylor engulfed me in a hug, while Luke stood guard by the bedroom door, his expression grim as he surveyed the disheveled bed. "Pack what you need," Taylor said firmly. "You're staying with me until this is sorted out." As I mechanically gathered clothes and essentials, the magnitude of what had happened began to sink in. My marriage was over. My husband was a stranger. My life as I knew it had ended. But somehow, through the devastating pain, a tiny spark of determination ignited within me. Daniel had threatened to take everything from me. He would soon discover I wasn't going to make that easy for him. The days following my confrontation with Daniel became a blur of emotional extremes. I moved into Taylor's spare bedroom, bringing only essential clothes and personal items, unable to face returning to the house that no longer felt like home. The first night at Taylor's, I barely slept, reliving the horrifying scene in our bedroom over and over, hearing Daniel's threats echo in my mind. Morning brought a strange numbness. I went through the motions of showering and dressing, but internally I felt disconnected from reality. Taylor, ever practical, took charge of the situation. "You need to talk to a divorce attorney," she said over coffee. "Today, before Daniel has a chance to make good on his threats about your assets." The word divorce still felt surreal, like something happening to someone else. But Taylor was right. I called in sick to work, then spent the morning researching divorce attorneys, while Taylor contacted her cousin who worked in family law for recommendations. By afternoon, I had secured an appointment with Melissa Jenkins, a divorce attorney known for handling high-conflict cases. Her earliest availability was 3 days away, which felt like an eternity. But Taylor assured me it was worth waiting for the best. During those 3 days, Daniel called and texted relentlessly, his messages swinging wildly between rage manipulation and artificial remorse. "You're overreacting. We can work this out. If you'd been a better wife, this wouldn't have happened. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but Jessica means nothing to me. You'll regret this when you're alone and have nothing." I didn't respond to any of them, saving each message as evidence of his emotional instability. On the third morning, I received an alert from our bank. Daniel had emptied our joint checking and savings accounts. Over $87,000 gone. I stared at the phone screen in disbelief, watching our account balances show zero after zero. Thankfully, I had always maintained a separate account for my business earnings, which Daniel couldn't access. It wasn't much, but it would keep me afloat temporarily. When I met with Melissa Jenkins later that day, I was still reeling from the financial betrayal. Her office was warm and professional, with credentials displayed prominently on the walls. She listened intently as I shared my story, occasionally taking notes, but mostly maintaining eye contact, her expression compassionate but determined. "Unfortunately, what you're describing is not uncommon," she said when I finished. "The financial moves especially are classic. He's trying to leave you without resources to fight." "Can he do that? Just take all our money?" I asked. "Legally, no. It's marital property, and the court will likely order him to return your portion, but in the meantime, it puts you at a disadvantage." She leaned forward. "Do you have the voice recording with you?" I nodded, placing the recorder on her desk. We listened together, Melissa's face remaining professional despite the intimate and painful content. When it finished, she nodded decisively. "While this might not be admissible in court, due to two-party consent laws in our state, it gives us tremendous leverage in negotiations. It confirms his affair, his financial deception, and his premeditated plans to hide assets before filing for divorce." For the first time since discovering Daniel's betrayal, I felt a flicker of hope. Melissa outlined our strategy file for divorce, immediately citing adultery and financial misconduct, request temporary support and exclusive use of the marital home, and demand a full accounting of all marital assets. "What about the house?" I asked. "It's in both our names. We'll file a lis pendens on the property," she explained. "That will prevent him from selling or refinancing without your consent. And based on what I've heard, I think we have a strong case for you to retain primary ownership in the settlement." As I left Melissa's office with a concrete plan, I felt marginally stronger. The pain remained overwhelming, but having direction helped. That evening, I returned to Taylor's to discover several messages from mutual friends. Daniel had wasted no time spinning his narrative, telling everyone that I had been distant and neglectful, forcing him to seek emotional connection elsewhere. Some friends expressed confusion, asking for my side. Others had already chosen sides, their messages cold and judgmental. The betrayal extended beyond my marriage into my social circle, leaving me feeling even more isolated. Taylor, seeing my distress, organised a small gathering of my closest friends for support. To my surprise, several of Daniel's colleagues attended, including his department head, Richard. "I've suspected something inappropriate was happening between Daniel and Jessica for months," Richard confided quietly. "There were too many closed-door meetings, too many business dinners. I should have said something sooner, and I'm sorry." His support was unexpected but welcome, especially when he offered to provide a statement about Daniel's professional misconduct if needed. As days turned into weeks, I threw myself into building my case while simultaneously trying to rebuild some semblance of life. I continued working, finding solace in the structured demands of event planning. My clients were understanding when I explained I was going through a personal crisis, many offering flexibility with deadlines. Meanwhile, Daniel escalated his attacks. I discovered he had cancelled our joint credit cards without warning, leaving me with declined payments and embarrassment at a business lunch. He changed the locks on our house despite the temporary court order granting me access. He even contacted some of my clients attempting to undermine my professional reputation with vague insinuations about my reliability. Each attack strengthened my resolve. I documented everything meticulously, forwarding each incident to Melissa, who used them to build an increasingly compelling case of harassment and financial abuse. A month after our confrontation, I met with a forensic accountant Melissa had recommended. He discovered that Daniel had been systematically moving small amounts of money to a separate account for nearly 9 months, coinciding exactly with the beginning of his affair with Jessica. The total amount hidden was substantial, over $45,000. "This is premeditated," the accountant explained. "These aren't impulsive transfers made in anger. This is a calculated attempt to hide marital assets over time." When confronted with this evidence during a preliminary hearing, Daniel's attorney requested a recess. They returned with a significantly improved temporary support offer, which Melissa advised me to accept while we continued building our case for the final settlement. As painful as this period was, I discovered a strength within myself I never knew existed. Each attack Daniel launched, each lie he told, each manipulation he attempted, all of them failed to break me. Instead, I grew more determined, more focused, more committed to fighting for what was rightfully mine. Not just financial assets, but my dignity and self-respect. During a particularly dark night when memories and pain threatened to overwhelm me, Taylor sat with me on her balcony, sharing a bottle of wine under the stars. "You know what amazes me about you," she said. "6 weeks ago, your entire life imploded, but here you are, still standing, still fighting. That's not just survival, Kat. That's courage." Her words touched something deep within me. For the first time since finding Daniel and Jessica together, I felt a flicker of pride. Not in my failed marriage or in the painful journey ahead, but in myself, in my resilience, in my refusal to be defined by his betrayal. That night, I made a promise to myself. Daniel had taken enough from me. He wouldn't take my future too. 6 months after discovering Daniel's affair, I stood in the kitchen of what was once our shared home, now legally mine, according to the divorce settlement finalized just days earlier. The journey to this moment had been grueling, filled with legal battles, emotional upheaval, and painful revelations, but I had emerged victorious in ways I never anticipated. The weeks following my confrontation with Daniel had been a masterclass in how quickly a person could reveal their true character when cornered. Despite his initial threats about leaving me with nothing, Daniel's position weakened significantly once my attorney presented evidence of his financial deception and the recording detailing his premeditated plans to hide assets before divorcing me. His attempts to portray me as career-obsessed and negligent backfired spectacularly during our court appearances. My meticulous documentation of our relationship, including calendar entries, showing how often I had prioritized his work events over mine text messages, where he encouraged my business trips, and testimonials from friends who had witnessed his supportive public persona, painted a very different picture than the one he tried to present. The turning point came during a deposition where my lawyer presented financial records showing Daniel had purchased the identical necklace for Jessica just days after buying mine using our joint credit card for both. When confronted with the evidence of using marital funds to finance his affair, Daniel's carefully constructed facade crumbled. His attorney requested a brief recess, returning with a significantly more favourable settlement offer. After consulting with Melissa, I decided to accept the terms. I would keep our house with Daniel paying off his portion of the mortgage. I would receive 60% of our retirement accounts and investments, and I would retain full ownership of my business without any claims from Daniel. In exchange, I agreed not to pursue further claims about his misappropriation of marital funds or to report his relationship with Jessica to his company's HR department. What surprised me most during this process was discovering that Daniel's relationship with Jessica had disintegrated under pressure. According to mutual acquaintances, once the reality of being with Daniel full-time set in without the excitement of forbidden meetings and secret rendezvous, Jessica began noticing the same manipulative behaviours I had experienced. Their relationship ended less than 3 months after our confrontation with Jessica, reportedly requesting a transfer to a different department to avoid working directly with him. My own healing journey progressed in unexpected ways. Initially, I had stayed at Taylor's apartment, unable to face returning to the house filled with memories of betrayal. But as the divorce proceedings moved forward and it became clear I would keep the house, I made a decision to reclaim the space rather than sell it. The day I moved back in Taylor and several friends helped me completely rearrange the furniture, repaint the bedroom and replace the bed. Each change, however small, helped transform the house from a site of painful memories to a symbol of my new beginning. I replaced our wedding photos with art I loved, painted walls, colours Daniel had vetoed, and created a home office that reflected my personal style rather than our compromised aesthetic. My business not only survived the emotional turmoil, but thrived. The precision and creativity required for event planning provided a welcome distraction from personal pain, and I poured myself into creating beautiful experiences for clients. Several high-profile events I organised during this period led to features in industry publications, expanding my client base and allowing me to hire an assistant to manage the increased workload. Through a support group for people going through divorce, I formed meaningful new friendships with others who understood the complex emotions of untangling a life shared with someone who betrayed you. These weekly meetings became a sanctuary where I could speak honestly about my feelings without judgment or platitudes. The first holiday season alone presented its own challenges. Rather than dwelling on traditions lost, I created new ones. Instead of our usual formal Christmas dinner, I hosted a casual potluck for friends who had supported me through the divorce. We exchanged silly gifts, played board games, and laughed more than I had in months. Dating again happened gradually and cautiously. 6 months after the divorce was finalised, I accepted a dinner invitation from Mark, an architect I had collaborated with on a charity gala. The evening was pleasant, the conversation easy, but I found myself hyper-analysing his every gesture and comment, looking for red flags I might have missed with Daniel. Recognising this pattern, I decided to work with a therapist specialising in rebuilding trust after betrayal before pursuing serious relationships. Exactly 1 year after the confrontation that ended my marriage, I was organising a corporate event at the Grand Hotel downtown when I unexpectedly encountered Daniel in the lobby. He was with a woman I didn't recognise, his hand possessively on her lower back in a gesture I knew well. Our eyes met across the marble floor, and for a moment I braced myself for the familiar pain. Instead, I felt something unexpected. Nothing. No anger, no jealousy, no residual attachment. Just a calm acknowledgement of a person who had once been central to my life, but now held no power over my emotions. I nodded politely and continued my conversation with the hotel manager, feeling Daniel's gaze lingering on me as I walked away. Later that evening, reflecting on the encounter, I realised how far I had come. The woman who had hidden in the closet, with a voice recorder desperate for evidence and validation, now stood confidently on her own, rebuilding a life more authentic and fulfilling than the one that had been shattered. The freedom I discovered wasn't just from a deceitful marriage, but from the need for external validation. I had learned to trust myself again, to recognize my worth wasn't determined by someone else's ability to remain faithful, to understand that being alone was infinitely better than being with someone who undermined my reality. The most valuable insight from this painful journey was learning to recognize red flags I had previously ignored. Daniel's small lies, his projections, his subtle undermining of my confidence, all were warning signs I dismissed out of love and trust. Now I understood that real love doesn't require constant vigilance or explanation. It doesn't leave you questioning your perceptions or apologizing for your success. Betrayal taught me that while we cannot control others' actions, we can control our response. Daniel chose deception. I chose dignity. He chose immediate gratification. I chose long-term integrity. He tried to break me. I rebuilt myself stronger. If you're watching this and facing your own betrayal, know that the path through pain isn't straight or easy, but it does lead forward. Trust your instincts. Document everything. Build a support network. Find professionals who can guide you. And most importantly, remember that someone else's failure to recognize your worth doesn't diminish it. The day I signed the final divorce papers, my attorney asked if I felt vindicated by the favorable settlement. I considered the question carefully before answering. Not vindicated, I told her. Free. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? How did you find the strength to move forward? Share your story in the comments. And if this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience. Remember, sometimes what feels like an ending is actually the beginning of a more authentic life. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps anyone who needs to hear that survival isn't just possible, it's inevitable when you choose yourself.